So it gives me the great privilege to do a talk on the subject joy through transformation. So we're going to start with just a short period of reflection to kind of warm us up, get us into the mood for this talk. So it isn't a meditation, so you just find a position that feels comfortable for the next 2 minutes. Just close your eyes if that feels okay. And also just to encourage you at any point during this talk, if you want to move, please do. If you want to lie down, please do. Just trying to create some ease and relaxation in the body is really, really encouraged. Okay, so we're just going to have an opportunity just to come inwards into the interior world of our being. So just taking a pause, maybe just to reflect on what has transformed in your own life. So this might be something very specific, or maybe it's a general feeling, maybe of not being the person that you were, say, 6 months ago or a year ago. Maybe you notice that you don't react as much as you used to. Or the way you view the world and others has softened. Maybe you're a little kinder or more compassionate to yourself. Now really feeling into this transformation. You might notice feelings of ease in the body, maybe contentment, maybe some pleasure or joy. And just acknowledging that everybody in this shrine room will have experienced transformation. Because we've all turned towards the Dharma. We go into refuge in our own personal way to the three jewels. And maybe this has a flavour of joy. So joy isn't something you get or learn. It's a natural expression of our human nature. We could even say our Buddha nature. And in this very moment, you are transforming. And you won't be the same person after this talk. Okay, if you have your eyes closed, I'd like to open them now. So just wait to start that, maybe just get us in the mood for the topic, warm us up. So this talk is Joy Through Transformation. So in the meditation I mentioned you won't be the same person after this talk. So what I don't mean is that I'm going to deliver a talk that's going to blow your mind. Or maybe I will, or maybe that's the next talk, I don't know. But what I'm talking about is that actually if we stay open and if we stay receptive to receiving the Dharma, then something does transform. Even if you notice, oh gosh, I'm really bored, what's for lunch, that moment of awareness, actually being aware of being bored, in that process, there's a transformation in that knowing. And there might be some things in this talk that you're just saying, I have no idea what Lilasuri is talking about at all. I'm a bit confused or lost. And that's okay, that's absolutely fine. Maybe just see if you can just let these things just wash over you. There's no expectation, you don't need to do anything, you can just receive. So we're going to be exploring what is being transformed, how we can transform, and why joy in the path is important. So the figure that embodies transformation, we were learning in the dedication ceremony last night of Vidyapala. Our figure is the Guru Rinpoche, Padmasambhava. So we'll be hearing quite a bit about him in this talk. So let's start at the beginning. So there's an important step that we need to experience before transformation can take place, and that's perfect vision. So the Buddha's first discourse after he attained enlightenment was on the Four Noble Truths. So the first truth being that suffering exists. The second truth is that the cause of suffering is craving. And the third is that it is possible to alleviate suffering. And lastly, the way to do this is by following the Noble Eightfold Path. So the first step on the Noble Eightfold Path is perfect vision. And the 7 remaining steps are classed as the path of transformation. So for transformation to be possible, we need to start with perfect vision. But what is perfect vision? So Sangha says that perfect vision represents the phase of initial spiritual insight and experience. So this might arise in very different ways for different people. So for some, perfect vision might arise as a result of personal tragedy or loss. For others, it may arise by way of a spontaneous mystical experience. Sounds good. Which can include our experience maybe of being outside in nature, or as a result of looking at a painting or listening to music, or through the practice of meditation. So we all have our own personal stories and experiences of perfect vision, or what brought us to the Dharma, what brought us to the Manchester Buddhist Centre. So that's one of the questions that you might like to explore in your groups later. So what is transformation and what is being transformed? So again, quoting Sangha, so he says, most of us carry in our minds what we might call a model of the spiritual life, some image that conjures up what it means for us. Quite possibly we will tend to think of development, growth and opening. We may even see in our mind's eye the unfolding petals of a flower. But this is not the only way. We can also see the spiritual life in terms of transformation. The word transformation suggests something radical, some fundamental shift. Literally, it means a change of form. In the spiritual life, it signifies a change of consciousness, a total shift in our being, a revolution that affects us from the depths to the heights of our individuality. It describes a transition from what is worldly to what is transcendental. It also means a death and a rebirth. And if we're honest with ourselves, we are fed up with ourselves as we are, with the self we have been stuck with for so long. That's quoting Sangha, but I'm sure we can all relate to that in our own experience too. So we could say that transformation is what being a Buddhist is all about, so transcending from the worldly to the transcendental. And we often have to start a transformation process by acknowledging and experiencing how the 3 poisons, so greed, hatred and ignorance, keep us trapped in samsara, going round and round the wheel of conditioned existence. What also needs transforming is our relationship to conditioned existence. So the Buddha taught that all phenomena, including thoughts, emotions and experiences, are marked by the 3 characteristics or the 3 marks of existence. So the first one is impermanence. Everything changes. So much of the time we relate to things as if their existence were permanent. For example, we break the mobile phone, which we really love, and then we just think we can't live without it. We look in the mirror and start seeing more grey hair and wrinkles and wish we were 10 years younger. And this can cause a great deal of suffering. And then secondly, suffering or dissatisfaction, dukkha, is a second mark of existence. So life is dukkha, the Buddha said. But he didn't mean that it's all unhappiness and disappointment. He meant that ultimately it cannot satisfy. So even when things do satisfy, maybe we're having a pleasant time with friends, a wonderful meal, we got a new car, the satisfaction just doesn't last because it's impermanent. And then lastly, not self. So the Buddha taught that there is no unchanging, permanently existing self that inhabits our bodies. So in other words, we do not have a fixed absolute identity. The experience of I continuing through life as a separate singular being is an illusion. So what we call the self is a construct of our physical, mental and sensory processes that are interdependent and constantly in flux. So, when I was just going to take a moment to introduce Padmasambhava, as you'll see, he's here on the shrine. There is a really big rupa, a big statue of Padmasambhava as well. If you went into the library building through this side and then head right down into the room that's in the right-hand corner, there's a massive big rupa there. I really encourage you to go and have a look. I'm really taking his form and everything, all his symbolism. So I'm not doing a talk on who is Padmasambhava, but you will get a really good sense of him with some of the teachings I'm going to share. But also, every year we have Padmasambhava Day Festival, which we will do again this year on the 15th of September. So I'd really encourage you to come to that because, there'll be a lot more teachings around the Guru. So the foretelling of Padmasambhava can be found in 19 different sutras and tantras. So in the Mahaparinirvana Sutra, the Buddha says, 8 years after my Mahaparinirvana, a remarkable being with the name Padmasambhava will appear in the center of a lotus and reveal the highest teachings concerning the ultimate state of the true nature, bringing a great benefit to all sentient beings. So he goes by quite a lot of different names. So the two names I'm going to be using interchangeably is the Guru Rinpoche, which means precious guru, and Padmasambhava, which means born of a lotus. And his role was to keep the Dharma alive. Hence he is often referred to as the second Buddha. He had a miraculous birth, so he wasn't born of the womb, in the land of Udayana in India, circa 8th to 9th century BCE, on the Lake Dharmakosha on a lotus flower. So at the time, the king of Tibet, King Indrabodhi, encountered this miraculous child sitting on the lotus. And astonished, as you would be, the king asked the boy where he lived, who his parents were, and how he sustained himself, to which the child replied, I came from the unborn state, the Dharmadhatu. My father's name is Samantabhadra, and my mother's name is Samantabhadri. For food, I eat dualistic thoughts, and for work, I benefit all sentient beings. So even as a child, there's no messing about there with Guru Rinpoche. So overcome with joy, the king invited the boy in return to return with him to the palace as his adopted son and crown prince. Throughout his lifetime, Padmasambhava acquired the knowledge and practice of all the major sadhanas, siddhis and yogic methods, and is famously known for meditating in the charnel grounds, or we would know them as the cemeteries of Tibet, with Darkinis as his companions. So let's just take a moment. There's quite a lot of information there. I'll just do a little recap. So we've explored that in order to experience transformation, there first needs to be perfect vision, which is different from all of us. And it's a natural process that starts to question in our lives how the poisons of greed, hatred and ignorance keep us trapped in the wheel of samsara. And we have introduced the Guru Rinpoche as the embodiment of transformation and perhaps even the hero of this story. So let's now look at how we can transform. So the way to transformation is through training the mind towards generosity, compassion, metta and wisdom. So when we refer to the mind in Buddhism, it includes sense perception, verbal and abstract thought, emotions, feelings of happiness and unhappiness, attention, concentration, intelligence, and more. So what we're talking about is every type of mental activity. So it's the mind that believes, I am the centre of the universe. Not you, Apeksha Priya. I am here, you know. And not everybody over here know me. And everything evolves around this sense of an unchanging, fixed self. It is the mind that reacts through greed, hatred, and delusion. And it is the mind that craves for pleasure and has an aversion to the unpleasant. So let's hear from the Guru about working with the mind. So I'm reading from the Dakini teachings. There's quite a good reference books just to plug the library here as well if you're interested in reading more about Padmasambhava. So this is called Taming One's Mind, and it's a conversation with Yeshe Sogyo, which I'll bring her in a bit later. So Master Padma said, when practicing the Dharma, you must first tame your mind. Yeshe Sogyo asked, what does that mean? The Master said, you must extinguish the scorching flames of anger with the water of loving kindness. You must cross the river of desire on the bridge of powerful remedies. You must light the torch of discriminating knowledge in the darkness of stupidity. You must crumble the mountains of pride to the ground with the pestle of diligence. You must overcome the storm of envy by wearing the warm garment of patience. In any case, these 5 poisons, your old arch enemies, will ruin your being in the free realms of samsara if you uninhabitedly indulge in them. Do not let them run wild. There is a danger in that. So quite a strong teaching there from the Guru. So Padmasambhava in this reading was referring to what we call the kleshas, and 5 of them he was referring to as attachment, aversion, ignorance, pride and jealousy. Lots of sticky things, which are all born from the 3 poisons. So the process, so these are processes that not only describe what we perceive, but also determine our responses and our actions. So it's the mind and the action very much linked. So Sangharakshita, in his talk from 1979, given at the London Buddhist Centre on Padmasambhava Day Festival, is reflecting on the fact that the Buddha only taught for 35 to 40 years, which wasn't enough time to have an impact on the collective psyche. So he says, the Buddha's teaching had to bite much more deeply into the general consciousness of humanity. If you like, into the consciousness of the world, or even the consciousness of the universe. And this is where the Guru comes in. It's as though he doesn't add anything, he doesn't teach anything different, he doesn't have any additional teaching, but he is concerned more with the transformation of the depths. And this is why he figures as the subduer of the gods and demons. So there's a really famous story that often gets shared on Padmasambhava Day festivals, which I'm going to share with you now. So it talks about how he established Buddhism in Tibet. So the king of Tibet was trying to build a monastery called Samye. The problem was that as it was being built, local demons took it right down. So he asked Padmasambhava to travel from India to tackle the demons so they could continue building without interruption. So I'm just going to read you a passage from The Life and Liberation of Padmasambhava, Canto 58. Then the foundations were laid for the walls, but a Naga whose abode was a rose bush with beautiful petals, knowing that in order to build, his rose bush would be cut down, resisted and called the genies to his aid. Yakshas and Amanushas, in concert with the Free Ganyan, destroyed by night what had been built during the day, and carried back earth and stones to their previous places. So if you're a bit like me, you might be feeling a bit sorry for that Naga whose abode was a rose bush with beautiful petals. Yeah, but we have to kind of understand this really metaphorically in terms of our mental states. So we all have these familiar abodes in our mind. We have our own rose bushes in our minds, places that feel safe, which is often due to our habits or conditioning. And we attach to them. We don't want to leave them, a bit like the rose bush. We don't want them to change, and we don't want to change either. So the Nagas or demons can be seen as symbols of the cause of suffering and delusion. So things around attachment and clinging, pride and ego, anger and hate, jealousy and ignorance. All of these can be seen as our inner demons or our negative mental states. And we need to become familiar with our demons to transform them. So Padmasambhava uses a Tibetan purba, and I tried to find one. I thought there would be one in the cupboard, I don't know why, but there isn't one, surprisingly. So a purba is a three-sided knife or a nail-like ritual implement which embodies the essence of transformative power and is used symbolically as a way to pin down the demons, pin down the negative mental states, so you can examine them closely. We don't need an actual purba. That's why I wasn't so upset when there wasn't one. We don't need one. So you can use your own imagination to pin down mental states. So, for example, maybe on this retreat you made an intention to switch your phone off. And before you know it, it's switched on again and you're scrolling through social media. But then suddenly you notice what's happening. And you switch your phone off, and then you start to feel a bit guilty because maybe you broke your intention, you really wanted to stay with your phone. So what we could do, we could just wallow in guilt. Oh, I'm so bad, I'm a rubbish Buddhist, But what we could do instead is get your imaginary purba and pin down that mental state instead. Mental states often have a physical feeling as well, so you could notice that. What does it feel like within the body, this guilt? Examine it. What led to you switching your phone back on? Maybe you were feeling lonely. Maybe you were feeling anxious or overwhelmed and you just needed a sense of connection with the outside world. So by pinning that down, you can really understand that. So then you can understand what you need. So maybe you just need some metta, some love, and then you can move on with the rest of your day instead of sitting in that space of guilt. So it's a very useful tool, whether you've got a real one or an imaginary one. So because the demons are part of our psyche, we actually feed the demons rather than trying to annihilate them. So the goal is transformation with compassion. And this is where Padmasambhava comes in very strongly, is the embodiment of compassion. So the Buddha, moments before he gained enlightenment, was assailed by demons, which were sent by Mara. So he didn't stand up and physically fight the demons or get upset or feel defeated that he was useless at meditation. He just sat patiently and offered compassion to the demons, which then turned into flowers. So the great Padmasambhava also exemplifies this example. So the demons represent the psyche of the Tibetan people who were initially resistant to Buddhism in Tibet. They preferred their native Bon tradition. Yeah, they didn't really want this new thing coming in. But he transformed the demons, in other words, the mental states of the local people, into protectors of the Dharma. So the story goes that he flew up into the sky and commanded all the demons to help. So rather than hinder the construction of Samye, which was completed without further difficulty, he did this amongst wondrous signs, such as flowers falling from the sky, statues moving as if alive, and amazing displays of light and music in the sky. So the great master Padmasambhava and the abbot consecrated a new monastery, and the people were overcome with faith, peace and joy. So, Another example of transformation is through spiritual death and spiritual rebirth. So when Padmasambhava appeared on this earth, he came as a human being. So in order to dissolve our attachment to samsara, he also exhibited 8 extraordinary manifestations, which arose spontaneously out of the great equanimity of the Dharma. And for each he assumed a new personality, symbolised by a new name and form of appearance corresponding to that name. So because initiation is equivalent to entering a new life, it's a type of rebirth. So there's some of these 8 manifestations. If you're interested, you probably would be able to find some information in the library about them, but I'm just going to pick out a couple of them, because quite often people maybe will have a resonance with 1 or 2 of them, in particular around some of their qualities. So for example, Guru Naima Oza helps practitioners who are beginning to practice love, compassion and wisdom to actually actualize these qualities for the benefit of all beings. And then for practitioners who are worried about whether lunch will be to their liking or whether they need to get another pillow because the one they've got is really lumpy, then Guru Shakyasenge can help by demonstrating how to awaken in this lifetime by using discipline and renunciation. So making do with your lumpy pillow. So as well as the 8 manifestations, he also describes himself, so again this is from the life and liberation of Padmasambhava, as taking on many different forms, many different beings. And this is just one of them. I am Padmasambhava, the alchemist, possessing the instructions that transmute the 5 poisons. I do not bid farewell to pleasures. I take them with me on the path. I exult in the 5 dhyanas. So in this reading he calls himself the alchemist, which is someone who can transform something from a seemingly magical process. So the Guru Rinpoche is expressing his extreme joy through meditative absorption. He can transform his habitual reactions to the poisons and he takes joy on the path. He also describes himself not only as an alchemist but as a sorcerer, a queen, a king, an old woman, a youth, an astrologer, a maker of gods, a master of formulas, the deathless one, so on, so on, so on. So the Guru transcends all material forms. So we don't take it literally that he is an old woman. We take this as meaning that he sees deeply into the conditioned nature of all beings. And through wisdom and compassion, he is devoted to liberating all beings from suffering. So what does this mean, all this mean for our own practice? So just a little recap of that section. So we've heard that in order to transform, we need to work on the mind. That the poisons and the kleshas keep us locked in samsara. And that the Guru Rinpoche transformed demons and mental states through compassion. And by expanding beyond the fixed identity of self, by playfully claiming is an alchemist, old woman and youth. So being playful with that. So through training our minds, we can radically transform our experience for the better. And we can work on the mind through developing ethics, practicing meditation, and cultivating wisdom. So otherwise known as a threefold way. So, why is joy on the path important? So the practice and teaching and Buddhism often have a reputation of being a bit somber rather than joyful. I always talk about suffering and the end of suffering. It seems like there's not much room for happiness or joy. And even some people even think that maybe those qualities are not very Buddhist. You know, it might lead to attachment if we like joy so much. We might just want to be joyful and all the time and just be quite clingy around that. So, quoting Sangha, if you have found something very precious that you were looking for, and if it has really begun to work in your life and has begun to transform it, well, why should you not be happy? If you're not happier than those people who haven't got this wonderful thing called Buddhism, who haven't got these free jewels, if you're not more happy than them, well, what's the use of being a Buddhist? Or what does being a Buddhist or taking refuge in the free jewels mean? So that's another question you might like to explore in your groups. So I think there's some good areas for reflection there. So joy is represented on the spiral path as a positive nidana. So in dependence upon faith, joy arises. So Sangha actually goes as far as to say that joy is a hallmark of a true Buddhist. Joy or rapture is also one of the 7 factors of enlightenment. So joy is not only a fruit of awakening, but also a prerequisite of awakening. So when love meets pain, it becomes compassion. When love meets happiness, it becomes joy. Joy is an expression of the awakened heart, a quality of enlightenment. Joy is also the creative mind rather than the reactive mind at work. It's a positive mental state, and it brings inspiration and vitality, dispelling confusion and fear while connecting us with life. So when we live in the present, if we're being mindful, joy often arises for no reason. So discovering this can really change our lives. So whether we are paying careful attention when wholesome mental states arise, or when we're maybe reflecting on gratitude, or feeling the delight of living with integrity, we can access joy by shifting the focus of our awareness to what uplifts the heart. The Buddha spoke of this as inclining the mind towards the wholesome. This doesn't mean disregarding suffering. It does mean not overlooking happiness and joy. So with so much fear and sadness in the world, it is healthy to let our hearts delight in the blessings of life. It's important to remember that in addition to the 10,000 sorrows, there are also 10,000 joys. So in the Mahamangala Sutra, or the Discourse on Happiness, the Buddha lists the greatest blessings that bring about a happy and peaceful life. In the last verse, he teaches to live in the world with your heart undisturbed by the world, with all sorrows ended, dwelling in peace. This is the greatest happiness. So this is obviously a version of happiness that's sold to us in society, in the consumer culture society. You know, everything points to be happy. We need to buy something new. We need to own something new. But we can touch into happiness in this moment. So we're just going to have an opportunity to do that. Again, it's in a meditation, but just find, a position that feels it has some ease. Closing your eyes if that feels okay. Just have a couple of minutes. So just very gently, just bringing awareness into the body. Just becoming aware of how the earth is holding you. Just is it possible just to soften in the body anywhere? You're having a feeling of letting go into the earth. So when the Buddha talks about undisturbed by the world and dwelling in peace, it is about knowing how to see and appreciate the things we usually take for granted. So we're just going to do that for a moment. So noticing the beating of your heart. Becoming aware of this precious breath coming in and out. Acknowledging this precious life. and the possibility to awaken in each moment. And knowing that everyone here wants to live with compassion. Maybe there's a feeling of gratitude. Maybe there's an inner smile, a warmth in the body where joy resides. So this kind of joy is indeed the aim of our spiritual life, as it is the kind of joy that both results from and leads us towards liberation. If you've got your eyes closed, you might like to open them now. So, joy is all great and good, fantastic, we want to be joyful, but what happens when, how can we bring joy in at times we're experiencing adversity and challenge, and there are times when it feels very difficult to contact joy? So when I think about how I can connect to joy in times of hardship, I think of Yeshe Sogyo. I'm not sure about who she is. So she was able to hold suffering as well as love because of her faith, resilience and devotion to the Dharma. So Yeshe Sogyo is revered by Tibetans even to this day now as a foremost disciple and consort of Padmasambhava. She transcribed his teachings and concealed them as treasures across the Tibetan and Himalayan landscape, to be revealed by successive tertons or treasure revealers during times of strife. Yeshe Sogyo was a princess, but she didn't have an easy life. She was devoted to her practice and refused marriage on numerous occasions because she didn't want to be distracted from the path. And because of this, she was mugged, assaulted, poisoned, abused and scorned. When it was time for her to go into intensive training, she went into a cycle of practices called the 8 austerities. To accomplish them, she went on retreat on a glacier high in the Himalayas, a place of extreme isolation where even if she called out for help, no one would hear her cry. The point of the austerities was to train the mind. And this was done in these extreme circumstances. And the instruction was to maintain the practice no matter what arose, no matter the obstacles. And she did. Through physical hardship, she maintained her meditation. However, in her 3rd year, she started to lose heart. Doubts filled her mind. She persevered, but her stamina wore out, and she became increasingly weak and ill until it was clear that she might die. It was at that crossroads that she prayed to Padmasambhava, crying out to him to come and help her. Oh, every time that gets me. Oh, I think because I've cried out to Padmasambhava a few times to help me, so I can relate, yeah. Somehow by dream or mystic vision or supernatural power, her teacher appeared in front of her and gave her advice. Advice that guided her not only through that moment, but also through a lifetime of practice, all the way to her enlightenment. And this is what he said. Ever want to be intolerant of unpleasant situations? Now is the time to take joy and sorrows as the path. Whatever hardships now before you. So this phrase, to take joy and sorrows as the path, refers to the ability to take an experience and make use of it to train, to see into the nature of reality, to clarify what we are. So Padmasambhava also had experienced adversity, After he was adopted by the king of Tibet, he was expelled from the palace for accidentally killing someone. So apparently he was dancing on the palace roof and his trident he was playing with fell down and struck someone down and killed them. And then he was sent to the charnel grounds as punishment. So as a prince he'd been accustomed to life in the palace, but now he lived in the charnel grounds. But he made no distinction between the two. As he remarked to the Dakini Mandarava, this is what he said. A frightful environment such as this is the catalyst for a practitioner's true practice to emerge. Adverse conditions are the true wealth of a practitioner. A frightening, uncomfortable place is a knife that severs discursive thought. The wrathful charnel ground is the environment through which the deceptive views of eternalism is exposed. So the Dakinis, who are the female embodiment of enlightened energies, played an essential part in the Guru's life, especially in the charnel grounds, which is a realm of the sky dancing Dakini. So reading from the Dakini's Warm Breath, which again you might be able to find in the library, the Dakini refuses to accept the logic of life versus death, gain versus loss, and pain versus pleasure. The Dakini shows the landscape in which this hopeless logic disintegrates, and we directly experience the world as it is. In this charnel ground, beauty has no rival in ugliness. The polarities have collapsed, and great joy is found in the greatest devastation. This is the power of the dancing Dakini. So we've introduced a few new characters here, and you can see this astonishing world unfolding. So you have Padmasambhava Guru Rinpoche, his student and an enlightened being in her own right, Yeshe Sogyo, and the Dakinis all meeting adversity with joy, because ultimately any other response would be viewing experience as dualistic, as polarized, as conditioned. So to summarize, in order to transform, we need to have an initial spiritual insight, which is unique for each and every one of us. And from this insight, we can start training the mind, moving from the reactive mind, of greed, craving and ignorance, to the creative mind of generosity, compassion, metta, and wisdom. We can learn from the teachings of Guru Rinpoche, who transformed the demons of the mind, not by beating them into submission, but through compassion for the suffering of all beings. Joy is essential to the spiritual life. Bhante Sangharakshita says it's the hallmark of a true Buddhist. Joy is the expression of the awakened heart, a quality of enlightenment. And even when we have to go to the difficult places, the places in the mind that feel frightening, entering our own charnel grounds, we can take joy on the path. Remembering that profound understanding of suffering does not preclude awakening to joy, and that joy can always be found when we live in the present. Thank you.